Hi, hello, and welcome to the Plone Newsroom, episode 22. Record,
Bingo!
yeah,
Live.
we won something, I think. Recorded for World Plone Day 2025. And Fred, it's been a year since we did the
It's
last
been
one.
actually a
Yeah,
year. Yes,
and
yes.
why has it been a year? Do you have a good excuse?
Yes, life happened.
Oh, that's a good
Life
excuse,
life
as good
happened
as
last
any.
year. Yes, yes. Yes, so here are your hosts again, Philip Bauer from Munich and Fred van Dijk from Rotterdam. We had a kind of streak record, kind of with some pauses in the past, but we had a really big one since last year. We recorded a special German one for World Plone Day 2024. And after that, indeed, for me personally, life happened. I had a huge Plone project. As I told you, we talked before, I was switching companies, which also has been finalized now. Then in the end of the year, we had a great vacation. And then the Plone Conf, which also took again, I think, 1 or 2 months to recuperate from. And here we are in 2025.
Yeah, for me, same. Life happened. I didn't abandon Plone. I don't know, we just didn't get around to doing another Plone Newsroom. By the way, it should have been a monthly podcast about Plone, but now it's yearly. No, we're trying to get back on track.
Yes.
Let's see how we fare with that. Let's not promise something that we can't deliver on. But we want to give you a short overview about what's happened in the last year. Not everything, obviously, but some highlights and what's new, basically, in the world of Plone. So a couple of events happened. Fred, you already said there was PloneConf 2024. It was in Brazil again. I did not go. It was one of the first Plone conferences in many years that I didn't go. But you went. Can you tell something about it? How was it?
It was yeah, simply amazing. So it was my second transatlantic traveling. The first one was Boston, which was also the Plone conference. That was the perfect excuse to finally visit one of the Americas. That was in 2016. Yeah, and then 8 years later, we have a conference planned in Brazil. So it's like, okay, let's try the other Americas, the lower one, and it was amazing. We traveled there November 8th. We did 2 weeks of traveling through a large part of, for me, yeah, southern Brazil. And we ended after 2 weeks in Brasilia, where the last week we had a conference. And yeah, before we start talking about the conference, the country is for me is amazing. I'm living in a country with now 15 something people on a 150 by 300 kilometers size in total. You can travel from the southern west to the northern east in 3.5 hours by car. When we were on the plane and we arrived at above land of Brazil, it was like, oh, we're in Brazil, and it took another 4.5 hours before we were in Sao Paulo, and I was like, oh no. The first travel we took from Sao Paulo after acclimatizing for a few days to our first travel destination, I told my guys, look, we're traveling to South Europe now. We were in the plane for 2.5 hours to our first kind of tourist location on the travels, and it was like as far as we would travel in Europe, almost half through Europe to get to our final destination. That was only the first leg. We had in total 12 flights, so I'm
Oh,
a
God.
bit. Yeah,
So
I'm not a fan of flying. I don't fly that often, but
yeah.
I really catched up now on my ecology print now, so I have to take it easy a while again. We did
Yeah,
a
so
lot of traveling there.
you've been blocked from leaving Europe for this year.
Sort of, yeah, yeah. Well, good luck. The conference is
That's good. It's in Finland, so
that's
it's
in Finland,
very.
so that's good back
It's
again.
it's not
So
that easy to get to by
no,
train. Actually,
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
go through Russia,
yeah.
which is not a good idea at the moment, or by ferry, which is possible. I think should be good. But I'm gonna fly anyway.
You're gonna fly, yeah, yeah.
So I
So
didn't go to
protocol.
Brazil. I
No,
didn't go to Brazil because I already was at PloneConf in Brazil, but a couple of years before that. And did you? So the last Plone conference in Brazil had a sprint after the conference, as it usually does, and a sprint after the sprint of the conference. That was in João Pessoa, and there we spent days in. We had stand-ups in the pool, and we drank Coco Loco, which is like fresh coconuts,
Yes, I have, yeah.
enhanced with cachaça. Did you follow up on that tradition?
No, I can tell you about the cachaça. There are different levels of quality in cachaça, and even in cocktails, you can really taste the difference there. So I was never a fan of cocktails, but I started to learn. So beginners level now on appreciating cocktails for me. And no, I didn't. Also, I didn't attend the sprint this time at the conference because we had already done a lot of traveling before, and we still wanted to go back to Sao Paulo to visit another friend there and relax a little bit, and then before we were going back. But then again, yeah, Brazil. So it was two conferences. There was also a Python conference at the same time. And again, to come back to the sheer size of the country, they have like 3 or 4 Python conferences every year in different parts of the country.
Obviously,
It can take you longer to travel by plane from southern to northern Brazil as it can take you just to go back to Amsterdam from Sao Paulo for us for the traveling. It was... Yeah, so it was like 2 conferences in one. We had a really good mix of people coming from the Python part, coming also to visit some Plone stuff. There was, of course, a language barrier because Python is predominantly Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. Erico also always makes a joke that even people local there cannot understand him in Brazilian Portuguese because he has another dialect again. So that's also, for the size of the country, might vary. But yeah, we had a lot of people I saw for the first time that I knew kind of online, from commits, from small messages, from forum posts, from online discussions on GitHub, and that you see them there for the first time, and that you finally also meet their country. It was really great to meet them there. A lot of good contents as well. We had a lot of. I did. I had a stressy one. I had 3 talks this time.
Oh, you shouldn't do that.
Well, I managed. So that was really. And I'm always involved with this stuff. I cannot just write something and then let it go for 3 weeks. So I had this nice traveling through Brazil, and at the same time thinking about my talks. And the last week when I was there, it was easy for me to just finalize them.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'd say for everybody who's interested, check YouTube. We've got all the talks recorded there, also mine, also many others. We had really great conversations. I had to go live of a project during the conference, which was a little bit less ideal planning, but at least saved me from getting a bit too much intoxicated at one of the very nice evening outings because I had to go back early that one evening.
That's a good idea to take it easy at least once per week.
Yes, and like we're getting wise and a bit older, so you should maybe skip one, and then you can pull it through the conference.
That's
which
fun.
we did.
I watched some of the talks. Really enjoyed the content that was created there, and the level of the level we've reached. I remember when we did the conference in Brazil the first time. I gave 3 talks. I think there was the first talk I gave on add-ons. This was also one of my first mastering Plone trainings. And I think we've come a long way since then. And it shows in the product and in the maturity of the community that
yes.
We know better what we're speaking of now than we did like more than 10 years before. Yeah.
Also, mind-boggling is first going to the southern hemisphere and having already Christmas vibes while it's approaching summer was really interesting. So the climate gods were really good on us poor Dutchies going there because we had at least mild warm weather. We never had really outrageous 35, 40 degrees something the whole time we were there, almost a month, 3.5 weeks. So that was really cool. But then again, indeed, I was seeing Christmas decorations. They start really early in Brazil with that, and for the whole 3. So during when we arrived there somewhere halfway November, they already started. We think they had these huge Christmas balls in a park in Sao Paulo, but every time I saw a Christmas decoration, my brain was like, "Huh? What's that? Who put that there? What's that for? Oh, that's Christmas. Oh yeah, it's Christmas.
Doesn't really compute when the weather is like that.
Why is it so warm approaching Christmas? I'm in Brazil. Check, and then I could continue again. But I had that loop for so many times in my head. It was so changing to experience that for once. And when we got back in December, it was cold for a month. Like, I want to get back to the warmth. I want to get back.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So what else happened last
Great
year?
conference. Yes. So that was also like we kind of involuntarily said goodbye on at least in public on April. We had the Beethoven sprint. We had the first time axolotl sprint in Mexico last year for the first time. Again, I think there was a. I'm not now. Too long ago. I don't dare to say it anymore. Was there already an axolotl predecessor or something? Because I think it was picked up from another Mexico sprint.
Really?
But maybe it wasn't called axolotl.
Ages ago.
Anyway, axolotl sprint was held last year in June. And we had also, after summer, really cool, also kind of the sprint has been there before, I think, but not on this name, the Salamina sprint in Ferrara, which I visited. Which was also really nice because it was almost 10... No. 5... Aha, now I got it again. It was 5 years after the Plone conference. We had the Plone conference in 2019, organized by Red Turtle in Ferrara, in that nice cinema, if you remember, in the city center.
Yeah, sure. That was great.
A small, really cozy cinema where we were during the day, and then we were chased out around 6 because then the people came in to watch the movies in the evening.
Yeah, that was a good.
5 years later, which was last year, autumn, we had the Salamina sprint as well.
Has it been 5 years since Ferrara? God, time flies. That's horrible.
But it's also really nice to again walk in Ferrara and that's restaurant over there. Oh yeah, I think we went. Oh, we were there 5 years ago. Oh yeah, we had an ice cream there. And,
yes.
with these people, and yeah, it was really nice. So, and also something important at Salamina Sprint, we had a really good, as at the conference, but also before already at Salamina Sprint, we had a really good conversation with a number of people, key people in the community, also key integrators in the community who visited the Salamina Sprint, and where I think the first real a concept and plan of what we're seeing this year in development, and also what we're hopefully to see and to continue next year in development, was discussed how we can go further from Plone 6 to Plone 6 something, and eventually Plone 7.
Yeah,
that was
codename 7.
Codename 7. And that was a really productive talks we had there during the sprint week. It's a lot of coding, it's a lot of having fun and socializing, but it's also having the difficult conversations. And those were held there, and from that on, a plan was unfolded for Plone 6.1, Plone 6.2, and Plone 7, which we'll talk a bit more, I think, also the next 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah. So, like I said, a lot of cool stuff happened last year, and like obviously. You said, we were not out of Plone, but we just were too busy, and then after that, too tired to also talk about it again together for the record, off the record online.
Yeah, and since the last time we spoke, more stuff happened, especially this year. Plone 6.1 was finally released. Now we're at 6.1.1. Volto 18 was released. I have no idea where we are. Volto 1875 probably, if I know Victor. The big things about Plone 6.1 are, when you look at it from at the first glance, it looks very similar to Plone 6. Classic and Volto looks, the design hasn't changed because we only do fresh designs for the major versions like 5, 6, and hopefully 7. But a lot of technology has been added and stuff was included, stuff that you might already have been using in the past, for example, the grid and teaser blocks. But more than that, one very important thing was the dynamic teasers. I'm not going to demo anything because if you know Volto, you probably know what teaser blocks are. You can show existing content, and dynamic teasers have the ability to pull in, they by default pull in the current version of that content, and you can override that, and if you override that, you can sync it. That's a really nice inclusion. There's a new order tab where you can see the outline of all the blocks, and you can move them around without having to scroll through the whole page. That's very nice for complex composite pages in Volto. It's a very good feature to see. Also, there's something weird. What item might it be? You can look at that. There is an image picker in the image preview in the image picker. You can switch from listing view with the file names to a preview with the image, obviously, which is really nice. But the thing I'm most excited about is not Volto related. It is Plone distributions. We've been talking about that last year. I think I even gave a presentation at Plone Day last year. Plone distributions are still, I think, a very promising technology where you can bundle Plone Plone projects, project templates. Let's say, for example, a Plone intranet release would contain some pre-built logic and content types, and maybe a theme and configuration for an intranet site, including, and that's one of the key ingredients that we never had before, demo content that is maintainable, exportable, importable, changeable, and then you just redo the export and you got updated example content. So distributions, we're going to hear a lot more about that in the future, and I hope that when Plone 6.2 comes around, there's going to be big Plone distributions that people are actually really talking about and saying like, hey, have you seen this in this distribution? These guys did that, and that's so amazing. This is what you can do with Plone when you configure it, pre-configure it in an interesting way, and fulfill special business requirements. For example, the university distribution that was started last year at the Plone Tagung in Gießen, and the intranet distribution that is in the works, and others. So I'm really excited about that technology. And thanks to Erika, who was like masterminding and pushing the missing pieces and putting them together for that.
On two levels, yes. So to come back to the Plone 6.1 release, the Plone 6.1 release was a long time coming. I mean, Plone 6.0
It took a while, yeah.
Plone 6.0 was released in November 2022. So Plone 6.1 was finalized, I think, in February. I have to look back. I don't remember anymore because it was been rather hectic as well the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So early 25. And you'd say, okay, for a minor release, okay, what was going on? Because Volto 18 was, Victor told me last year, I think this has been the longest running single version of a Volto release where things kept getting added and added and added. And Volto 18 was already released at the conference, before the conference actually, last year. But then the 6.1 is of course the front end and the back end. And as you already explained, one of the biggest things in Plone 6.1 is that now Plone distribution and one other core module that is also required by the distribution concept, which is Plone export import, is now finalized in Plone 6.1, and that stuff also still had to be stabilized and fixed and checked, and that's what took what took a while longer before we had the 6.1. But if you look at the outside, when 6.1 was released, it was like a bit of a non-event. We had a lot of stuff. The real cool stuff for Volto 18, the stuff you already mentioned, is now also part of Plone 6.1. Was already kind of demoed and showed at the Plone conference. Yeah. Then we had to drag
we used
together.
It in production for a year already.
And that's the same as many improvements in Plone go. The front end and the back end, but also some core modules can be updated in between if you know what you're doing and test it. So yeah, 6.1 was kind of the shrink wrap around the front end, the back end, also in documentation improvements, and indeed now Plone distributions and Plone export import being part of the core of Plone. And that's a lot of stabilization because also with Plone 6.0, I have been using last year also Plone export import. And a bit of the distributions, I misused them a bit. I got told later, but I use them also in my own projects, for example, to create a project scaffold. So when a new developer wants to start working on the project, instead of installing a Plone site, they just install my demo site for the project with some content already there, demoing the specific content types, and they have a head start. And I don't need to distribute a content database or use another way to create a demo content.
Exactly.
So, but that was only kind of also internally what you can use the new Plone export import functionality for a standalone.
Yeah.
So
also,
yeah.
There's something. It's always we're always forgetting that. We shouldn't forget that. There's also classic, and I'm going to show you one thing that I really love. Small improvement, but big effect for content editors. So a couple of people were busy on classic Plone, adding a new and improved related items widget, where you can pick images, links, and as I said, related items. It looks like this. And it has what I really love and we didn't have before is you can switch the preview. So if you're picking an image, you can actually see which images you're picking. In this case, I'm editing I'm using the related items widget, so I can pick an image, but it's not going to be included. Just as a related item, but the same thing is used in TinyMCE when you say I want to link this to an item and I add a link, I click here and I use the same widget. Many special thanks to Peter Matthews and Mike Verstappen for working on that tirelessly for a couple of months. The final version that went in 6.1.1 was finished at the Beethoven's the Alpine City Sprint this year. So I really love that.
Yeah, so events this year. We have Plone 6.1 released, but if you look already, the thing with Plone releases is that we've been, at least in my humble opinion, Plone releases we've always been like, oh, that's the CMS. And it's now a front end and a back end where front end is separate and we need to bring those versions together. And there are some features in there, there are nice blocks, there are choose, etc. But what I realized is that if you look back now, where we have been working on since Plone 6.0, end of 2022 until now, is not only the CMS itself, but it's also the tooling around it and also keeping up appearances, but then for real, keeping up the real appearances with supporting your ecosystem. We are using two programming languages. A lot has happened in those programming languages over the last 10 years.
And it's easy to fall behind.
And it's easy to fall behind. And that's also what we did. So if you look at the front end, we moved there from NPM to Yarn a few years ago to last year, PNPM. Which has a number of features. Amongst ones is, of course, speed. But it also allows you it also supports, I think, monorepos better. We switched to real monorepo support last year in the front end. And also on the back end, on the Python part, we have been holding on to enterprise proven solutions. And I do disproven solutions because they were actually proven solutions. But now, like if you don't maintain them anymore, or you just keep using them, when something else better comes along, then it becomes tricky. And that's also what happened on the backend part, where we have for a very long time moved in a kind of disk-util setup tools setup. We had build out for many years, where build out is kind of really depending on the whole architecture of setup tools to get things done. Then we had pip, but that's for us, it seems already ancient, but pip kind of came along after setup tools, which improved a lot. But then we moved from this, okay, build out is taking more and more effort to only maintain for ourselves as a Plone community, where other people have started moving to pip because the whole Python packaging and tooling setup around installing modules moved to a pip-based world, but also with a Python packaging authority.
And then came UV.
And then came
Rust.
Hatch, UV, Rust, and well, if you look at a bit more broad, this is what has been happening in I think almost all programming, all interpreted programming languages for the last 5 years now. If you look at the front end, the front end world with JavaScript and bundling things, for a very long time those tools were developed in the programming language itself, which was dynamic. It's dynamic, which is JavaScript, which is very cool, but slowish. And you see there that the last years the bundlers and the tooling, the things have all not been written in JavaScript anymore, but mainly in Go or in Rust now.
Yeah.
And the same is happening now in the Python world, where some external organizations, external from the Python Software Foundation, started experimenting with, okay, what if we rewrite our tooling in Rust? Because that has to be fast. And then if we can use a really great dynamic programming language like Python, with it is nice, but it doesn't say that our tooling should and must be Python as well to benefit from it. And that's where Rust comes. That's where Rust indeed comes in now, and Go comes in already a while ago with many other tooling as well, where we now have alternatives, compatibility alternatives with UV. So that's a U and a V. And also a more project manager like Hatch, where UV is now able to replace virtual env, pip, a kind of a build-out init system. PyEnv, where it installs the virtual env. Sorry, you're right. PyEnv, where it installs your Python. So it manages your Python, it manages your virtual env. It allows you to create a project with a new style setup using PyProject TOML, so no more setup.py. And that's a lot of modern. And last year I was like, oh, all this new stuff, and working already on a project with existing tooling. But then when I look back and I talk to some people, I was like, look, you've been hiding under a stone, because this stuff has been around for the last 5-6 years already, where people have been experimenting also with different versions of pip. The whole the namespace stuff, we can also talk about namespace support in Python has been improved now in kind of 2 iterations already, I found out. But it has been going on for 5 years. But
the discussion in the Python software community has been broad, and it has never reached a point where it is now, where one tool is there to where most people aggregate and say, this is what we're going to use. We had like Poetry, Conda, whatnot, all kinds of approaches of managing projects, and they also had that like pipenv and so on, and all had their ups and downs, and people were jumping on wagons, and some people were not staying with build out or other ways of installation, and the same happened in the Plone community. But with UV now, I think there's a critical mass, and if you listen to Python podcasts, for example, you realize that, because everyone who they're talking to is using that stuff. They're not. I still use. There may be some stragglers behind, but it's mostly they're tied to the stone that they've been carrying around for many years, because they're just too used to the pain of carrying that stone. But UV is just the new standard, de facto standard, and it's a good thing that the Plone community is jumping on that too and using it. And the new cookie Plone is a wrapper around Cookie Cutter, like a scaffolding builder. And Cookie Plone templates has the templates that was released last year, I think, the first version at some point. And Cookie Plone templates based projects, it's like the default scaffolding for Plone, is using UV to install Python. It's using UV, which is a drop-in replacement for pip, to install all Python packages. It's using UV to build your workspace, and it's using Rough, which is a sister project, I would say, because it's maintained by the same bunch of people. For linting, it's also it's a drop-in replacement for all the PyCode style iSort, you name it, Python Modernize, all these tools that we have, they're all combined in one. It's called Rust. It's also written in Rust, and it's linting and formatting the code according to the exact same rules that these other tools had. But it's much faster. It's one tool, and it's one configuration file, not 15 different ones, and and so on. And also Hatch, the replacement for setup tools. But we're not. I don't think we're there yet regarding replacing setup tools for all development packages. If you have a project that requires like 15 development packages, is there a way to get rid of setup tools there, or do you know anything about that?
Yes, there is. We can talk about it in a while, because that's the last. That's also for me when I was like, okay, what's going on there? So let's first go back, because indeed we haven't talked, at least in public here, for a year. So you say, okay, only a 6.1 release, what happened? But indeed, since last year, this project scaffolding and creating a new project with we had Cookie Cutter Plone Starter, and last year
we had that before.
That was the first. Yes. That was the first reboot, I think, of a modern setup. Then last year, because of the move in Volto 18 to the monorepo structure and using PNPM, the Cookie Cutter Plone Starter had to be rebuilt for people to start also using PNPM and the monorepo setup and everything. So that was when Cookie Plone got into movement, I think somewhere early last year already. And then it took us indeed almost a year now to have finally at the Bucharest sprint, after a lot of work from a number of people, but which we should really do the joke again of mentioning our former Plone Foundation president, Erico, who has put a lot of time in there. But together with others who tested, I've also did a little bit to beta test the different versions of Cookie Plone also early this year, where we've had a lot of improvements now with the Volto 18 stuff. PNPM, the front-end ecosystem evolving, the back-end ecosystem evolving with Plone 6.1. And also, like you said, setup tools, and we can discuss a little bit of drama in the next 5 minutes for what happened this year.
Before we do that, let's promise that we'll do an episode where we go through the scaffolding and actually demo it, create a project, run it, build it, and so that people can actually see how that works. Yeah.
I will show you
really,
the final.
Really nice.
I will show you the final the version here in a few minutes, but we can do an episode on that alone. So indeed, the tooling has been a really big effort last year, but also the first months of this year, 2025, where that Cookie Plone setup now is kind of in a stable new version. Almost, we're not there yet. We're still using setup tools in the current version of the Cookie Plone templates, what is created. We still use setup tools and a kind of pip compatibility layer to install those development packages and also to pin our versions. But the next step, and I'm already experimenting with that in a number of repositories, myself as well, is to also let UV manage your versions. We can maybe show it. It's, for example, we develop all our Plone Foundation sites in public. The 2025 PloneConf org website is, for example, somewhere where we're experimenting with having UV managing your known good set and requirements, where in the current published version, we're still using a requirements txt and mxdev who generates the known good set for your project based on a released Plone version known good set. So, why all this? Let's do a bit of the drama. So why all this keeping up with the Joneses and tooling and PNPM instead of yarn, instead of NPM? This due to setup tools, to pip, to UV, and
because build-out just worked. Let's keep using build-out. I'm actually maintaining our company's own flavor of a build-out. Still doing. There's a 6.1 release for those who use that, and I use it sometimes for development of older projects.
Yeah. So some first drama, which was okay, a bit anti commercial for then maybe the JavaScript world, but suddenly in end of January or beginning of February, we had all kinds of front-end setups, local development setups failing on what turned out to be a CorePack issue. And CorePack is a module in the JavaScript world that kind of bootstraps the package manager you are going to use. So Corepack is a kind of an install small agent. I'm saying it from somebody who's not a JavaScript expert, so hopefully other people I will not get bashed. But it's a kind of, for me, it's a kind of the bootstrapping thingy to get npm or yarn or a version of pnpm installed and have that consistent. Really essential part, and that contained an error where whenever you would call Corepack, it could corrupt or do something in your local system, and that even happened in some setups where you already had made a nice container image. You would start up the container, but because it would kind of initialize Corepack, because we do a pnpm start, it needs pnpm, so it runs Corepack, and Corepack just failed for some reason. So that was a kind of wake-up call there. Okay, this is dangerous stuff. Don't try to do too much in your container images. It was solved. But people kind of called it a Corepack-ageddon or something in that direction. So we were like, okay, we've got it solved, finally done.
Back to work.
Back to work. Second drama.
Yeah.
Stuff was updated in setup tools and pip, and especially around the support for namespaces in Python, where we've been a long time user in Plone of having 2 or 3 dotted, or 2 dotted, so 3 parts of namespaces.
Plone app content types.
Plone app content types, Plone app something. So
yeah.
We've been using namespaces a lot. And there are improvements there, and again, this was on the deprecation list. This has been, people we know about this, they were working on this, they were working on having a better namespace support. It's also moving setup.py based setups to the new Py project toml based setups. And that suddenly caused all kinds of problems in the backend where namespaces were kind of mangled. What you would see, for example, is I cannot find I had one add-on. I cannot find collective underscore revision manager. I was like, underscore? That should be a dot. But internally there have been changes. I can't explain it now, but there have been changes to kind of normalize all namespaces to one single symbol if people were using another symbol. And that kind of tripped up the whole namespace support, where as soon as you try to set up a anymore.
So that broke everything. Like even old projects, when you try to reinstall old projects and you didn't have a full egg cache, it broke. If you had a full egg cache, you might not have experienced that stuff breaking, which means like it works for me. So it must be your problem, but it breaks for me and it works for you. What are you doing right? What am I doing wrong? It was really, really hard to debug. David did a nice write-up on what actually is happening under the hood, where a new version of setup tools is used, even though you pinned a old version of setup tools A in build out, B in your Python, but it's still being used. So there's some technical insanity in there, and it took a couple of days for the Plone community to mostly Maurits and David did a lot of work, and thanks to them for saving us basically by putting out a new release of plone.autoinclude, which was like the first package that broke. But also of build out and of what else? Yeah, these two are the most important ones.
Setup tools itself. So
setup tools itself, we had a couple of issues reported in setup tools, and we were part of that discussion. We as Plone community, I just read stuff. But there's a catch. That's the problem, because one of the fixes. A with Plone auto-include and B with the Z3 build out is that the smallest supported version is Python 3.9, and if you have an older version running, which is no longer supported by the Python Foundation, so you're out of security support if you're running that, but we still had projects and clients are using that still, Python 3.8. You can't use the fixed version of Plone.auto include and new setup tools and new ZC build out versions. So one of the only fixes I found, maybe there's still work, and a new thing that David is doing might help there. But actually, we had to go into the build out cache, which is a cache folder in your build out setup, and rename the downloaded egg, remove the underscores, add dots in there, and depending on the setup of the wheel, also do the same in folders that are contained in there, because there's a .distinfo folder and it needs to have the same format with a dot instead of the underscore. And then you basically faked an old egg cache. That is not fun, but that's the pain that you have when you use unmaintained version of Python.
Yeah, because that's Philip. That's the elephant in the room. We didn't say yet what the major event of 2024.
Yes.
Was the deprecation of Python 3.8.
Yes.
And Python 3.8 was the latest tested complete version underneath Plone 5.2. Because Plone 5.2 was our intermediate last version of Python 3.8 and our underlying application server framework ZOP 3.4 to now Plone 6, where everything has been updated to ZOP 5, and we support more modern Python versions. Because yes, you can maybe run Plone 5.2 with Python 3.9.
That's a secret that we tell you. You can mostly safely run Plone 5.2 on 3.9. But there are some edge cases that we're not going to go into where you might have issues. But that is like your way out until you update to a newer Plone version, Plone 6 or 6.1.
But it's like the safety island on crossing a very busy road on the crossover section, because 3.9 is not tested. Python 3.9 is not tested with Plone 5.2. Plone 5.2 is not tested and developed or anymore. Does not require get security patches unless you maybe need to install a security patch from Plone 6.0, and you can try it. It's unsupported anymore after so many years. And indeed, the whole discussion we've now been hopefully communicating to our audience the last 10 to 20 minutes. There's good reason we're moving forward, because our whole ecosystem with the setup tools, with the maintenance, packaging, etc. has moved on, and as a Plone community we also need to move on. And that's exactly what happened in Plone 6.0, but also is now one of those things which is why I would ask everybody, if you have a Plone 6.0 installation, check if you can move to 6.1, at least for your backend, because it has also these updated releases of all our packages for the current ecosystem, with small fixes and things to support tools like UV, to support the new style projects.
Yep.
And that's indeed the last or the kind of the hidden discussion, that if you use Plone and you have you need some tools to set up the project, and you need to install your packages, etc., and have your site running, and you succeed at, you're happy and fine. But there's a whole hidden world of this tooling where it's used to build the Plone release itself. So this is the domain of our release managers, Maurits and Victor mainly, where they use tooling to create the known good set, to develop and release all the packages. And that stuff was kind of still based on build-out not too long ago. This year's Innsbruck sprint has seen a lot of activity there. Also, last year already, Maurits did a lot of effort to start using pip instead of build-out. But this is where now the real challenge is at these months, and also a bit forward to improve our tooling there. To release a new Plone version, we also need to update all this tooling. Yeah. And at the moment, the building of new Plone, at least backend releases, needs to support both old style and new style packages. This is something that I've seen Maurits bite his teeth on during the Innsbruck sprint for 4 days, where he wanted to have his own tool chain updated to be able to work both with old style and new style packages, and he couldn't get it working with build out. And that's a hidden reasoning there, where a whole hidden part there. Second part where this becomes really tricky is where we have collected a lot of tooling over the years. Is if I have my Plone side project and I have a policy add-on in the back end and I have a nice theming add-on in the front end, so I can customize my site in those two packages, I'm fine. I need some extra. I need a theming, so I include Photo Light Theme. I include Photo Glossary. I include Photo Matomo. Those are all packages that are online and they kind of work. Same we have for the backend. And it's amazing that that kind of works for me. But imagine if you have to release Photo Light Theme. If you have to release other packages, then you need to test those packages against maybe a few different Python versions, different Plone versions, and in the front end you might need to test them against two Node versions, and you need to test them against maybe also with PNPM and with Yarn. So as soon as you are not kind of the integrator at almost the end of the line of developing CMS with Plone, and you use a lot of packages that are already there, creating those packages with all the tooling changes we've seen is really, really, really challenging.
Yeah, you can imagine I'm maintaining collective export import, and that does not only need to run in Plone 6.1 with UV and 6.0 and 5.2 with build out. It also needs to run on Python 2. It still does run on Python 2.7, and the tests are still running on Python 2.7. So using all that stuff is fine and good, and probably you can benefit from the fixes that you get from the community. But if you have to maintain the whole project or something that is used in all kinds of old versions of because you want the newest version of Plone collective export import to export stuff from an old site, because we still get new features in for exporting archetypes. Yeah.
Yep.
No shit, we do, and so that still needs to be tested, and that only works in Python 2. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and the unpaid and unsung heroes of maintaining Plone and the ecosystem are working tirelessly. And one person we want to call out is David again, who created the package with the nicest name in 2025. I'm not sure about 2024. So far. It's called Horse with No Namespace. If you remember the old song by a band called America, before America was made great again, they had a great band. Horse with no name, you know that probably. So there's a package, and that supports using old style, like the one that Plone uses, collective.portlet.something, and native namespaces simultaneously by hacking, pretty smart hacking. So I guess for the foreseeable future, next 2 or 3 years, a lot of projects will require a horse with no namespace in their setup, so that they can run the packages that are already ported to native namespaces simultaneously with old community add-ons that use old style packages, namespaces. But
especially now in this transitioning period where we have
we will have that,
and new namespaces support will be required there.
Yeah.
So, where are we?
Let's do we shouldn't dive
we can't.
too deep in.
We can't.
But I want to show at least one thing that is really, really nice about the new setup, because it's like, okay, you have a new way of installing Plone, Yarn, It may be faster, but I'm only doing this once a year. It's actually way more than that, and I'm gonna show you just quickly the way that rough is used, the linter and formatter that is also written in Rust, and it's used in Cookie Plone right now. So I'm sharing a project setup where I I configured rough. Oops, wrong screen. Here it is.
Yep.
So the make file here usually only, so there's make lint, and it does the linting, including it fixes the most obvious fixes. It uses UVX. If you don't know what that is, that's basically the same as pipx. So it doesn't install a package into your virtual environment, but it basically it just runs it. It's some kind of
no. It creates a virtual environment on the fly, installs the package in there, executes this, and then cleans up.
Yeah, it's
no traces left.
Since it's Rust, it's really fast. So I wrote my own lint all because I got a ton of source checkouts in sources, and I'm gonna just run that pretty quickly. I hope I'm in the right, yes, I am in the right folder. So that is a project that I'm working on, migrating from 2.5 to 6.1. And when I make lint all, it's already done. So that's all. It found 709 errors. It already fixed 2,000. That was like the first run, and because it fixes some, so it's really fast, and it reports the errors, and you can go through and see, okay, this is you should use an F string instead, because it's not fixing everything. It depends on how you configure it, obviously. When I make format all, it tries to fix everything. Here it's formatting 500 files, and it's already done. And this includes iSort. It includes fixing XML and HTML PT files, and you name it. There's like a ton of fixes that are configured in the PyProject TOML here in tool.rough. And it says, so this is Flake 8, this is Pi Upgrade, this is Rough, this is McCabe, and whatnot. So it runs a lot of stuff. It fixes your code according to the newest rules, and you obviously should go through the whole changes and commit them after checking them. Don't trust any tool just because it says so, but it's really good. So I'm gonna stop that now, and we should move on, I'd say. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, there's something. No, we're not at the next. Whenever we're gonna do the next one, there's something called dev containers, and we should certainly demo that, unless Asko is doing something or someone else is doing that.
Yeah, so this is a really nice background story. Actually, two of them. Last year, very quickly. For some reason, last year I was at Paul's office. Paul Roeland, our former also relation president, was at his office, and Paul was assisting a Google Summer of Code student working on the project. I was there for another reason, and I was there sitting next to Paul, and they were talking about something Volto, and I was like, "Hey, I know something about this." So I was, Paul, Paul. Okay, so. Really strange. I was there, pure coincidence, a bit of communication. I was at the conference in Brazil watching that Google Summer of Code presenting her final thought, and she was, and I was doing this, and then we were talking, and Paul and somebody else came around, and he mentioned something, and then I could continue again, and then I stood up and was like, I was that person. And it was total coincidence. I said, but the one thing we can learn from this is communication. It was really so strange to have this accidentally meeting somebody for another reason, chiming in on a group call, pointing people to something, and then that it turned out in that project they had it like 4 or 5 other times as well. And that's something I've now also seen this year. So what happened? You were mentioning dev containers. I was at a conference last year. I was chatting to David and some others, like, we really should get this dev container stuff set up, because then you can kind of, if you have a project and people don't need to install a local development environment, but they use container technology to set up their instance to develop, and you can do it both locally or remote. This was the same story what happened there. From the sysadmin team at the Plone Foundation, we've been kind of delivering the rough basic setup for the PloneConf website for the last two years already to all PloneConf organizers, because it's in our own interest, because then we can just host the whole thing for the next 5-6 years after the conference if we know what the setup is. So again, this year I provided, together with Erico, with a copy from another conference project, the plain basic setup for the PloneConf 2025 website. We've been using the cookie Plone improvements. We've been experimenting with CI/CD. We handed over to Ricky-Pekka, who's organizing the conference. One of the, of course, developers supporting him with the website and other stuff is Asko Suka. We set it up, and after 2 weeks, I get a message from Asko. Yeah, can I merge this branch here where I do some stuff with dev containers?
Small change.
Small change. And I was like, yes, you can. Please. I've been talking to people. We were hunting small issues and things, and we couldn't get it working last year. There are some the basic dev container images by Microsoft are horrible to start with, because they do 1,000 things, and we couldn't get it working. And then suddenly, okay, we hand you over a scaffold, and then 2 weeks later, I have this dev container stuff lying around, and I wanted to make it easy for Ricky-Pekka to see changes when I do them, while we further develop the conference website this year. I was like, yes, you can. So we've got a kind of dev container example now. We've already been iterating over it again, and Asko has already made improvements and other stuff there. And you see this flywheel of people communicating, hey, we did some work, can you start from there? That will make your life easier. Then somebody else gives you back, hey, we've been experimenting with dev containers, and I managed to get it into this project. Then we had the whole last phase now with UV and trying to replace the pip managed and MXDev versions with UV Sync, which we're also now trying in PloneConf, where we also get feedback on from other people. Hey, this works, this doesn't work. And it circles around and around, and it's really cool to see this flywheel effect with improved communication, with just showing people and having a kind of open working space where you can see what's being done, and also learn from that. And that's also what I wanted to, at least for my part, finish up. We've had a kind of catch-up session now with a lot of stuff happening last year. Like we said, in Plone and Volta releases, you might think, oh, a Volta 1780, oh, a Plone 6061. In 2 years, that community has slowed down. The opposite. A lot has happened around Plone, under the hood, in the programming language. We had to battle a lot of small things breaking, as we said. We've had 2 sprints now. We've had the Innsbruck sprint and the Bucharest sprint. Yeah, the break-in.
One thing, because the dev container thing, that's really interesting, and we should certainly demo that next time at some point. But a lot of that is built on devenv, which is written by a alumni by the Plone community.
Yeah, now you have to say.
I just had it.
I know already.
Domin
Koza, very good.
Yeah. He did a lot of really good Plone development work, and he took the Nix Kool-Aid, inhaled that very, very deeply, and went down the rabbit hole there and did great stuff. And now we're reaping the benefits from his work from the past couple of years.
But this is the diversity we have. Well, we are also in the Plone community, where people like to use different tools or experiment with different tools. And that's what you now see, that in this case, Nix is a really cool way to quickly set up a small dev container that's just for your purpose to run your software there. It's not ideal like any packaging system, but it's a good example. Hey, if we want to use dev containers, this is how we could use it and improve upon.
Exactly.
So, 2 sprints already held. Of course, after 10 years, I should mention that after 5 years, we had last year the Salamina sprint. Now we had, after 10 years of the Bucharest conference, we had the Bucharest sprint, which was like last week, I think. Last week or 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago was the Bucharest sprint, where again the final cookie Plone stuff was released, and we've got a lot of sprints coming up. Beethoven sprint in May. We've got the Plone Tagung happening
in June in Koblenz.
June in Koblenz, the German Plone Symposium.
Yes. With a sprint afterwards.
Then Axolotl sprint in end of June in Mexico. And also a new Salamina sprint will be held in September, but I haven't heard the date yet. But I think that is also now kind of announced officially that it will be happening, but we need to wait for the date.
Yeah. We saw each other at the Innsbruck sprint, the Alpine City sprint again, and I, going back to the cookie Plone templates, during that sprint I was working on, because we have these people, these projects, and these people who say, you're only taking care of the new stuff, and PNPM and Volto 18, and nobody does classic anymore. Cookie Plone templates will have a classic project, which is basically the same as a normal project, but basically throwing away some stuff and changing the configuration of others. So when you install only a classic, or when you only want to use Plone Classic, you will be covered and won't have to make any changes. But that's not merged yet, and we'll have to redo that. So at these sprints, Fred and me, we're always busy, not only talking to people, we're actually doing some work. Not that talking is not work, but it's like,
yeah,
we're also nerding away as code monkeys.
Yeah.
Shall we? Yeah, we should at least mention very quickly that we're not only going to have events this year, but there's probably also going to be a 6.2 release of Plone. It will probably be out, that's the hope, before the conference in Jyväskylä in October, so at least 2 or 3 weeks before the conference would be really, really nice. It's going to be a maintenance release focused around tooling and stability, but also some interesting features as long as they're finished. I'm really excited about the Volto form block improvements. It is an add-on basically, but it's going to be ready for the time of that release, because we have projects where we use Volto, but we have another side running Plone Classic, because we still use collective easy form, because the Volto form block is not powerful enough to do all the required stuff for forms for these clients, and we hope to do away with that and use the new and improved Volto form block for these. You'll hear more about that once it's coming along. Very importantly, I guess the sales pitch for Plone 6.2 is going to be distributions, because then more distributions are going to be production ready and can be tested and shown. That's the hope, at least. And then there is 7. Do we want to talk about 7? Not really.
Well,
it's for the future.
Yeah, we could do the introduction. I mean, we've already crossed the 1 hour block, so if they want to plan us in World Plone Day, they will have to give us a bit more already. So let's continue talking then for a few more minutes at least to explain a bit. So as I mentioned earlier, Salamina Sprint last year was really essential, where some stuff was talked through in the community, like, okay, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to move Plone forward? There's a lot of we've seen the JavaScript world is moving way faster. The front end world has been moving way faster than the back end world in our CMS setup. So there's a lot of technical debt and a lot of things that need to be replaced, and that's also what was discussed last year. We have Webpack, which is kind of at the end of maturity, almost getting end of life. There are way faster modern builders, builders now for front-end projects. One of them is Vite. We have dependencies on a lot of modules in the front end, like semantic UI, which has to go. We have Moment.js. We have older versions of React Router. The biggest issue we have with our server-side components, we are using a framework called Resel, which is kind of end of life and no longer maintained. So when we were talking things last year, from Plone 6, something that we had to Plone 7 will be huge. And we discussed we will not probably manage this within a year. So that was end of 2024. So a kind of plan was made. Which big topics do we have? Who are experts in our community that can work on those things? Can we maybe, when we look at sprints in 2025, can we say we hope to manage to do this by this sprint and this by this sprint, and that we have enough sprints to at least tackle a number of these large areas? The other thing is, if you replace Webpack with something else, your whole project breaks. If you upgrade React Router, and I'm not the expert here, this all hearsay by colleagues and by Plonistas at Sprints who have been explaining this to me. If you take out one part, upgrade one part, then everything breaks. So you have to do it all at the same time or slowly move it. And then when you look at the project management, look at the project part, we would not have any release in 2025. And this is where we now see, and this kind of has not been, I think, discussed that literally, but you see the result now of people thinking about it and planning ahead, that we will have a small 6.2 release, which is maintenance, and like you said, will be focused more on the ecosystem and distributions and showing off really cool improvements that we have in our add-ons that will work with distributions in Plone 6.2. You mentioned the form block. I can also mention you there's an upcoming now alpha release of Volto Light Team 6, which will have way better support for styling and configuring subsites if you have larger installs. And those subsites are a requirement with larger portals, with intranets, with university distributions, with
Definitely.
whatever. So this is a really big one, but it's an add-on. And just like we kind of been hiding all our tooling improvements for the last 2 years and say, that's not really Plone, but actually it is Plone. Also the distributions that integrators and users are now creating this year using the stabilized and mature now support for Plone distributions and Plone export-import in Plone 6.1, we can finally make true on that promise to have a number of distributions that really show off the power of Plone based on Plone 6.2. And at the same time, parallel, Plone 7 is now undergoing. There is a branch 7 on Plone Volto. It actually runs. I think our release manager Victor mentioned somewhere this week in an online channel that his personal website.
Yeah, he said that.
Was already running on a branch of 7, or he had it
He's
running somewhere
dog-fooding.
locally.
Yes.
He's dog fooding himself. But this is a project that will take most of 2025. So not to be surprised. I'm not a release manager, but if you look at this, we will not be able to get a Plone 7 at a conference. It would be really maybe an alpha at a conference of Plone 7. But 2025 will be 6.2 minor release, and at the sprints we will be working very, very hard on Plone 7.
So a big thing of what we talked about today is basically technical debt. The whole community and the whole project has a huge amount of technical debt. We had that in the past all the time, and we're working on that. But at the same time, let's not forget that, because a client who wants Plone is not really he's not picking Plone because they're taking care of their technical debt really good for them. I'm gonna pick that CMS because they have a good approach for that thing. No, there's going to be a ton of new features, and a lot of them are hidden in add-ons. For example, you already mentioned Volto Light theme. It already is the de facto theme for Volto 18. It's not shipped automatically. It's an add-on, which is a good thing. So we can have faster iterations. Doesn't need to have the same versioning maintenance for older releases. And Volto, the phone block, for example. These are two important add-ons where a lot of interesting features are coming in, and these will be the de facto standards. And at some point, maybe move into the core, but that is like, you always have to juggle. I really want to have a faster approach and adding stuff faster, but also but bundling it with Volto 18 or not. I'm not picking a side in that discussion, but with every add-on that we have and say that's really amazing, we really want that in core, there's always these things that we have to balance. But at the same time, we're at the sprint in Innsbruck, we had a nice and really long discussion about features that and improvements that we want to see in Plone Classic, and that was not really well planned, but incredibly productive list of features and improvements for Plone Classic, where you think, all the brain power is going into Volto and the new front end. There's a lot of wishes, not only technical depth wise but also feature wise, that are going into Classic. It's not like we're reinventing the CMS, and we're not adding Mosaic into the core. We're not having that discussion again, but there is a lot of brain power there, and we're writing clips and doing stuff and getting rid of Select 2 finally.
And maybe a misconception that's not there, but still to take it away, Plone distributions are not only for Volto, but Plone distributions can also be used for Classic UI.
Yeah.
And the interesting part as soon as you start thinking about distributions, you actually start thinking about, okay, what's an integrated set of add-ons with some example content and a way of configuring your Plone site so that you actually solve a use case like a blog, like an intranet, like a university portal, and what you see that we were able to do this on a technical level already for a very long time, because this is how we build projects. But this distributions abstraction now, and you mentioned it a bit early already, last year at the Plone Tagung in Gießen, we had a really nice roundtable discussion for an hour with actual users of Plone in university settings, where we asked them, okay, but what would you need in a 2024 then 2025 university portal setup? And that's where the user feedback came in, and that's where you can start, okay, but then we're still missing this feature in this add-on, or we need another add-on. You add it to the distribution, and you start to actually build a whole integrated concept instead of just technically clicking some modules together and hope that they will work. And this is the real promise, I think, for 2025, where we will do a lot more discovery what people can use Plone for and what they desire, write it out and start creating distributions. While at the same time, there's a huge development effort underway to fix a lot of technical debt and also improve our tooling further for a Plone 7 release in likely 2026.
Yes.
And we've got a lot of things we can talk about, Philip. It's been a year, but I see already we have to use every month to keep talking because otherwise we won't manage to cover everything that's going to happen this year.
That's true. But last but not least, we're not going to let you go without an add-on that we're going to demo. And because we're soon going to meet each other in Koblenz at the sprint there, I picked something that is written by Matthias Barde, who works for the University of Koblenz, and he did this really nice Volto image crop widget that we're using in the project. And I'm going to demo that quickly. So when you have a Volto site and you have an image that you uploaded and it has, I don't know, the wrong ratio or the wrong focus, you can edit the image, the object. And this is a German site, so it's Bild zuschneiden, which is crop or edit image. And then you have let me zoom out, and then you can pick whichever part you want to highlight and see, okay, this is going to be it. Or you pick one of the pre-configured sizes that you can configure in your code, and it keeps the ratio. So when I pick one of these ratios, I can't increase it again. So that's really nice, and I can remove that again, and then now I have flexibility, and I pick this, and I crop, and I apply, and it says, hey, this is really going to change the file. So the file, the file itself that's in the database is really going to be changed. It's destructive editing. So when I save, this is what's left in the database, and now the site automatically always uses this cropped version of the image. It fulfills a frequent requirement where an editor doesn't want to fire up Photoshop or something else to just pick a detail from the image. Yeah. And it doesn't do as much as Plone app image cropping, which does not support Volto well. Where you have like different versions for different scales. It's super complicated. This is a smart and nice fix for these cases, at least for our projects. It's really nice.
Another shout out to Matthias for providing Volto full calendar block.
Yeah, also. And for organizing the Plone Tagung. He's a strong contestant for most wanted Plone person of this year, maybe. So with that, we're gonna leave you. I hope you have a great Plone Day and watch the videos on YouTube. Maybe 2 years in the future, and it's already 2027, and you know what state the world is then. Please don't tell us. It's kind of scary. Have a great spring. Fred, see you soon. And thanks for listening to us. And we promise we'll try to keep the next episode under an hour.
And keep up with the news, because as you see now, after 1 year, we had so much news. It was almost confusing to start and pick a middle and pick a finish. Yeah. But we're back again.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
See you soon, Philip. Bye-bye.